It's not really, but you know what? Let's just go with it. And that's supposed to be fixed. But you know what, guys and gals, you know what? We're just trying some stuff. Let's just do this. So we're gonna talk about maps today, okay? So maps are what are maps? Well, kids, let's talk about maps for a second. So okay, let's do it this way. And I don't care if this is all messy and you guys see this and all this kind of stuff. I like it. I like the human side of things. But I don't want to be on here too long, anyways. This is just an exploration on what mental maps are, schemas. Okay, so um, what they are, why they're important to those who believe that manifestation is the way in which reality operates. So there are certain laws, and there are certain ways in which they govern our experience of reality. And are these laws outside of us? I don't necessarily think so. And as somebody who was, like a philosophical lecturer in universities and stuff, I don't, I don't know if this idea of solipsism is very well understood. That is for another time. But I know that some people are interested in that, so I wanted to make sure that I kind of mention that. We will talk about solipsism at one point, but as you can tell, this is not your typical kind of manifestation. Oh, here's how to manifest, your house. They're great, and there's like 1 billion of them. So go and find those. This is more understanding our place in the universe, and Neville Goddard, one of the mystics that I follow, talks about the promise, and it's kind of like waking up to realizing that you're God. And by the way, let me argue this as well before we jump into maps. Is a lot of people think that what that means is that you just stop wanting things. I really don't think that us understanding that, or even Neville might have, if he presented it this way, which I actually don't think he did, but some people argue that he did that, as in like, well, we're God and we're just going to end desire. I completely disagree with that. I disagree with the idea of the Buddhist concept of separation. And again, I think that all of these concepts of separation and then like getting rid of desire is actually not divine. I think that is a very bad misrepresentation of even Buddhism and mysticism and this idea of detachment. And we can go into that some other day, but I wanted to jump into this. And welcome to the channel. We're just talking about the psychology of mental maps. Okay, so these are super super important because these are the maps that you live by. Okay, but these maps will give you limiting beliefs. These maps will give you freeing beliefs, right? And so meaning beliefs that free you. And so you have this kind of oscillation or this kind of back and forth between these beliefs, only because most of our maps of the world were given to us, right? Most of our maps of the world were bestowed upon us by our parents, by our carers, our caregivers, whoever took care of us. If you're Orphan Annie, then, Mr. Bucks or whatever his name was, so you can correct me. And so these mental maps, though, are guiding you right now. They've guided every single one of your behaviors, okay? And they will continue to guide them. Now, Neville talks about these, right? We use them in these kind of like manifestation circles as limiting beliefs. I don't even know if that's helpful because these are just beliefs. And so the more we label things, the brain goes into, hey, I need to go find reasons why what you just said is right, not because of what you said is right, but because of what you keep saying is correct, right? Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, 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 Jimmy. How you doing? Welcome. Where are you from? Guys, come in, say hello. If you can hit that like, hit that follow. If you're looking for coaching, hit me up, DM me somewhere, join the free Discord. There's also a free WhatsApp group. But this is a different take on manifestation, y'all. So because I'm trained in science. People love like burning the candles and using sage. No judgment, just not my thing. And I like to take this to the advanced level. So if you're here to look for like manifesting a house, you will learn that. But I'm not in that like I'm trying to teach you how to get to a point where you can actually manage all of this on your own. To me, that's what a role of a coach is. If you're with a coach for 10 years, that's not a great relationship. Right? They should be letting you go. And you should be able to feel like, hey, I'm confident when I walk away from this relationship, right? Um, okay. So let's talk about the psychology of where all of these maps are. Okay. So I hike a lot, I rock climb a lot, I do all kinds of dangerous things like that. But most of my experience is that I'm always having to use maps to get there, right? Meaning if it's a new area and I don't know anything about it, then I'm gonna have to use a map. Okay, so maps aren't bad. Maps are just who you are. So maps are what your parents gave you most of the time. According to developmental psychology, Jean Piaget, I know he sounds like he probably makes good pasta. He's dead though. So he's not going to make you any pasta. But essentially, what it is that you have been given these maps by your parents, by your caregivers, by your childhood influences, your friendships, everything. And what happens is you begin to live by them. In fact, not only live by them, they will actually help shape your personality. And then you begin thinking at 15, 17, 19, 22, oh, this is who I am. That's not who you are. Personalities is like something that is just an idea that you can keep constantly changing. You can keep iterating, right? It's kind of like Play-Doh. Remember Play-Doh? Like all that kind of stuff that, let's be honest, probably most of us ate it at least. I trust me, I haven't ate it in a long time, at least a couple weeks. So, like basically, what it is you have to think of personality not as and the problem is if you live in a Western culture like America or like America or Britain or Australia, where we kind of worship the personality, as in like, oh my gosh, look at this personality, and I really want to be like them, and oh, I love their music, but I also love them, and I love what they love, and so we really kind of have this social contagion, which means just like, well, I'm gonna attach myself to that. And that's not good because what you're doing is you're training your mind like I'm gonna be that person and I'm never gonna change. That's not a strength, by the way. Okay. I know in our culture we even have advertisement that says, oh, you're not changing, you sticking to your guns is the best thing you could ever do. That's actually why most people and many people who struggle with mental health, not all mental health, but I'm not making a claim for everybody. I'm saying as in depression and stuff like that, right? N- Um, is people struggle with depression sometimes because they're fighting to stay the same person, and then life, God, universe, whatever, is saying, hey, there's more to you and you need to go discover who that is. Let go of all of this facade right now. That's why we call it a facade. It's because we're performing a character, right? And so, but why do we perform the character? Because we have maps, we have mental maps, and we get dopamine for these maps, which means yes, we are addicts. We are addicts to our current personality. Okay, so that means one, that's not a bad thing, because what that means is now that we're aware of it, I can change it. So then if you know that dopamine is part of the cueing system, which means your brain saying, oh, yes, right? And so here's another thing. Most people hear dopamine, and because it's like the cool kid on the block of all of the neurochemicals, they think they know everything about it. Well, it's an expectation neuromolecule, right? So meaning it actually looks for prediction, and that's what it rewards you for, more of like, oh, I can predict what you like next. Oh, I can predict. And so you end up forming a personality based upon these predictions, right? And then you get rewarded for it the more that it predicts the same pattern that you keep repeating. Okay. And so it can say, "Oh, I know what you're gonna do next because based on this is what you're gonna do next." And then you feel compelled or inspired or moved by it, right? So Neville talks about this, but he talks about all of this. Neville Goddard, he talks about this in very esoteric or mystical terms, and he didn't have all this terminology because they didn't have that terminology that we do today. And so at the same time, what we're dealing with is this kind of need to understand that the maps that you've been given. So let's just make that practical because I keep using the word maps. Okay, so let's say at the age of 5, because the ages of 5 to 8, according to developmental psychology, your maps will be solid, like they'll be formed. Okay. What that means is you'll begin to understand who you are, who the world is, what is right, who is wrong, all of these kinds of things by around that set of ages, right? Depending on who you are. Okay. So what that means is you end up forming a personality based on what you experience around these elements, around these things. Okay. So if you grew up in a very authoritarian, as in a controlling helicopter parents, right? Oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't go here. Oh my gosh, what if this happens to you? Almost kind of like the parent who's afraid for you, right? And they create these copious, endless amounts of rules. And then you end up like, oh my gosh. And then you end up either perpetuating it when you're a parent, or you end up living your life in such a way where you end up being scared of things as well, because your parents were saying, hey, you should be scared of this, right? So it's a mental map. So mental maps are things in which you have gotten, received, and have been imprinted upon by your parents at a very young age. And so then you begin living those things. Here's the thing though, over time, because of dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine, all these other neurochemicals, you start doing this on autopilot. So then you're like, oh, I this is who I am. No, 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 no. This is who you're practicing. This is who you're performing. Okay. And so what ends up happening is that since you end up performing this, you end up getting rewarded for this. And then when you get rewarded for this, you keep performing this. And then it's a perpetual groundhog's day. Yes, I'm saying that your personality is like a groundhog that's stuck in a hole with Bill Murray and a movie. Yes, I am definitely. And so oh, it says I should add something. A challenge you wish to. Okay, sure. I have no idea. Guys, I'm being distracted. Okay. So we're just gonna I don't know what it means. Anyhow, so um so when you're when you're trying to fully grasp this, okay, let's say that you are like, hey, I grew up in a childhood where I heard people arguing a lot about money, or I heard people fighting over um bills, or I've heard whatever it is, then now you're creating a mental map or a schema, right? Or a way of being and a way of like perceiving and a way of emotionally connecting to certain ideas, right? About money. And then so you're like, okay, well, money creates tension. So I'm going to avoid it. And I'm going to look back. You can even like romanticize it. You can be like, no, it's always, and that might turn you into an anti capitalist. That might turn you into something else where you're like, no, I'm right. And that's it. So rather than us actually taking the time to question our triggers, our emotional convictions, right, about what we really, really believe, we romanticize it and we look at it as a positive all the time. So that's just confirmation bias. And by the way, just a little tip, side kind of advertisement for um manifestation, that's confirmation bias. I mean, at least on a very neuroscientific level. That doesn't mean that there's not like a mystical element or a mystical kind of undergrowth happening, or like a foundational element that we aren't fully aware of how it works, but we trust it, right? So, but there's two types of confirmation bias, right? And then I know you already hear this. So there's one good and there's one bad, okay? And so the bad confirmation bias is obviously something that's helping you, an addict who thinks, I can overcome this. Somebody who's an alcoholic and it's like, I've only had 5 drinks today, right? Whatever it is, we justify it. So we do this with any and every one of our beliefs, okay? And here's the kind of crazy thing, almost haunting thing, according to Neville, is that you will understand the fullness of a state. Okay, so without getting too much into this, because I don't want this to be too long, but I think it's a very powerful statement. And one day we'll probably just do a workshop on this. Is you will experience the fullness of a state. So a state is, and he says this, is a body of beliefs, right? And it's a repeated body of beliefs. Okay. You keep rehashing it, you keep doing it, and you're like, why can't I overcome this? What? Because you keep repeating the body of beliefs and you get rewarded for them, right? And then the more you repeat it, the more that it becomes your reality. And then, like Joe Dispenza says, it becomes your personal reality or personality, right? And so in that, you end up with a map of the world, a map of what you think is possible, what is impossible, right? Unless you're Alice in Wonderland and you're like hanging out with Mad Hatter, my favorite character. So you know, it's one of those things where I think we have to really, really not accept, but kind of become aware of the fact that these maps are guiding your behavior. They're guiding your speech, even because the more that you repeat the what you talk about, the more that you experience what you talk about. Now, there's this kind of belief, and I don't think it's helpful within the manifestation circles of like, well, speech creates a type of speech creates. Not all speech creates. This is why there's not a lot of pink elephants around because not everybody believes in pink elephants, right? It's a preloaded speech. It's a speech that is imbued, saturated, drenched in your own map of the world. This is why we're talking about maps today, right? Because if you have a map of the world and you say, well, life isn't fair, guess what? You've just preloaded any statement that you say that reinforces that. So you're like, oh yeah, but look at the news and look at how that guy was treated. Look at that. Look at it. That's just the way it is, right? Worst statement, by the way. That's just the way it is. No, it's not. There's never just the way it is. Okay. That's you giving yourself an out to never change your belief system. Okay. That's not taking responsibility. So Neville says something else. You are the operant power. It does not operate itself, meaning the law, meaning your mind, your mental maps, you get to have the excuses. You get the option to live out a life of limiting possibility, but that's up to you. Right. And so, taking back your responsibilities, taking back your power, and taking back your power is realizing and remembering, because this is what manifestation is all about. It's remembering that you were always the sovereign one, not your parents, not abusive parents, not parents who fought over money, not whatever it is, not any childhood abuse. None of those things, as bad as they are, as evil as they are, right? They are not you. And so fundamentally, what you do is you sit and you observe, and then you realize, wait a minute, there's something that's observing my thoughts. That's you, right? And that thing, call it God, love, peace, whatever it is that you want to call it, give it a cool nickname. You can call it a Ferrari. It doesn't matter, right? As long as it helps you. Um, that thing, that entity, that divine intelligence is what is waking you up to the fact that, oh, okay, so wait, there's more to me. So there's more to me than what others are saying. There's more to me than what I've accepted. There's more to me than what society says is possible. There's more to me. This is why there's the 4 minute mile, because someone along the way said, hey, nobody else could do a 4 minute mile until I did it. Right. And so this is coming into your era, right? Your kind of post impossible era, and saying everything is possible. I am possible. Kim possible. Sorry. Only Kim is possible. You are not. I'm kidding. So this idea here about schemas is very, very key, very important, very powerful, because if you are willing to do the work and the mental work of, oh, this is where the schema is, and you ask yourself, why did I feel that way when that person said this? Why am I in a relationship that I keep repeating over and over and over and over? Why is and this doesn't mean other people don't take responsibility. It means you take responsibility for your part, right? And so it's called co-creation for a reason. And so you're like, why is my schema, why is my mental map something that is like basically reinforcing the belief that I'm not loved, right? Or whatever that is. So then you're going to keep repeating those things because you were taught, hey, whenever I shouted when I was hurt, dad didn't come, or dad was never there, or dad left, or mom left, or whatever it is. And then it starts narrating for you the more you repeat that. Right. And by the way, you don't repeat this at the age of 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, because by the ages of 5 to 8, it's so automated, right, within you that you don't question it unless you are taught to question it even at that young of an age, right? And so what you begin doing though is now you can actually use Neville's technique of revision, which is a very powerful revision. I'm gonna close on this because I think a very powerful tool that really isn't explained too much. But revision is, in my opinion, the physical changing of the actual substance of an event that happened to you in your past. So what you do is you go back into your imagination from the first person only. Never watch a movie. Don't watch your movie unless you're trying to disconnect from it. Then you can use NLP, and you can use reframing and all these other great techniques that I teach in my coaching courses. And basically what you do is you create a first person scene with a one loopable action. You replay the scene as you wish it would have happened, okay, not as it did. And you keep rehearsing that, and then every single day you wake up, you are now that person. Even you're going to have doubts, you're going to have like, oh, I'm delusional, blah blah blah. No, you just keep repeating it, and every night that you, and every morning, right? Because those are the two states where you're hypnagogic, which means you're kind of like that drowsy, kind of like impressionable state on your subconscious mind. And you keep repeating it, repeating it, repeating it, repeating it. And then throughout the day, you just kind of catch yourself whenever you doubt or whenever that fear comes up, right? Because you're going to actually start installing a new person. And then over time, the more you repeat it, and when you repeat it and you become that person in your waking life as well, which means you're now creating coherence or congruence, right, between the new person, then you become that new person. It may take a week, it may take 4 days, it may take 2 years. That is dependent only on you and the naturalness, which means how it feels natural to you. If you're constantly fighting the fears all the time, it's not going to feel natural. You got to go eventually ignore them or create a distraction or whatever it is that works for you, right? Um, but you essentially want to deal with whatever maps, and then you create newer maps. Then you create maps for everything that you want in life. Not to the point of like, okay, I'm trying to micromanage the universe or micromanage my personality, but you do it in such a way where you're like, oh, this is a part of me that I want more confidence. So then you start building a scene, and then you every day start speaking like a confident person, and then you start feeling a confident person, and then you start building habits like a confident person, and so on and so forth, right? We could talk for hours on this, but I wanted to kind of jump on here and just talk about maps and give it like a sweet kind of introduction as we kind of make our way through what maps are, how they operate, and why you need to know what they are and how they operate as well. So this will help you up level your manifestation game. So get in touch if you're looking for coaching. Thank you so much for listening. Share this with at least one person today, and share a few comments below, and get in touch if you have any questions. You got this.